Welcome to Analysis. First off, a quick note on chronology. As a refresher, if you're playing through the Kingdom Hearts games, you should absolutely play them in release order because the story was designed that way. The games dole out information and story in a specific way and in a specific order. We're doing the story chronologically here for clarity. Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts 2, and 358 over 2 days comprise what we can probably call the Nobody or Organization 13 arc. They all have similar themes and take different angles on the Nobodies and how they relate to the themes of Kingdom Hearts overall. So we're analyzing Kingdom Hearts 2 specifically here, but a lot of what's introduced in it in terms of the Nobodies and the organization are left vague in that game to be clarified and resolved later in days. Of course, we already know that story and have talked about it, so I'm going to be using Kingdom Hearts 2 as a conclusion to our discussion on Nobodies and what they're about, which actually ties into the themes of Recoded pretty nicely, which is why we're grouping them together. Recoded was originally a Japan-only episodic cell phone game that wasn't really meant to be super important, but the last couple of chapters they added hinted at the direction the series is going to take for the next major story arc leading up through Kingdom Hearts 3. So let's talk about where our characters are at before we go into the games themselves. As our protagonist, Sora grows in more subtle ways than everyone else. Like in Kingdom Hearts 1, Sora learns something new in each world he visits, and this game is really just about him growing up. Though he's still goofy and aloof, we do see him becoming more serious as the stakes of his adventure grow. Recoded doesn't feature the real Sora, but shows us what his role for the next part of the series is going to be, bringing back all the people that have fought and lost against Master Xehanort and his plans. Basically, for every time Kingdom Hearts made you cry, Sora's gonna shoulder that burden and try to fix it. This is where Sora's empathy, his strongest trait by far, comes to the forefront. Sora is always trying to help people, but to save everyone, he's going to have to shoulder a burden bigger and more serious than anything he's had to so far. Naminé hides the extra memories from Sora because at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2, he's just not ready for that weight. After his second journey and having grown and matured, he's almost ready to take on that mission and finally bring everyone back. The last we saw of Riku, he was coming to terms with his darkness and decided to use it alongside the light. During days, he saw that this wasn't so easy and he had to give into his darkness to save Roxas. This has turned him visually into Ansem, and this plagues him throughout Kingdom Hearts 2. Riku feels like he's lost his way and is ashamed, so he hides himself from Sora and Kairi. Of course, Sora and Kairi don't actually care that he looks like their enemy because they know that he's a friend, and it's only after realizing he had their acceptance the whole time that he can accept himself. This takes him out of his spiral of guilt and self-judgment and allows him to finally move forward. Riku's journey from the opening of Kingdom Hearts 1 has been a struggle with his darkness, but he's almost conquered it and has just a little bit further to go. I joked about this during the actual story time, but Kairi becomes a much more active participant in this game, and though it's not perfect, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Since she doesn't spend most of the game unconscious this time, we get some more personality from her. You may remember I mentioned before that Kairi isn't remembered enough for how sassy she is, but in this game she really gets a chance to show it. She begins the story unsure of what to do and how to find Sora, who she's only just remembered exists, and ends it going into battle to save him. We're still not sure how this will all shake out in the end, but Kairi's definitely one to watch going forward. We've talked about how great Axel's character arc is in its entirety already, but let's discuss his specific role in Kingdom Hearts 2. Continuing in the mystery of Axel's motivations not being clear until the game after this, at first you're not quite sure what Axel wants. You know from Chain of Memories that he's a complicated guy who's fond of a good double cross, but we still believe he's working with the organization's interests at heart. Sykes is the one who tells us that he's gone fully rogue, so that later when he's trying to help Kairi and Naminé, we finally realize he's on our side. In truth, Axel himself doesn't seem sure where his loyalties lie. Roxas leaving is his major call to action, and for the first time he's not working an angle, he just wants his friend back. His relationship with Sai is completely dead, but his feelings for Roxas are uncomplicated. So really he's acting pretty selfishly in this game because everything he does to help Sora, Kairi, and Naminé is really in service of getting his friend back, but it speaks to just how real Axel's feelings are. The further Axel goes to get Roxas back, the more and more the organization's insistence that nobodies don't have hearts starts to become more obviously untrue. Axel's not thinking that deeply though, and so he leaves it to Sora to figure things out for him in the end. I've given Ansem the Wise a lot of guff during storytime, but in my defense he's actually pretty awful. In Kingdom Hearts 2, Ansem finally goes on his mission of revenge against the apprentices who betrayed him. However, it's important to note that although Ansem does seem to regret that his research led to all this evil stuff happening, he doesn't actually seem to process or even give a thought to the actual cost. He only really cares about his personal slight, and the idea that Ansem's Seeker of Darkness and Xemnas were just taking Ansem's own research to its logical conclusion is only driven home when Xemnas himself says it. Ansem's story is as classic a revenge trope as you can imagine. This is one of the most common motifs in all of literature because the desire for revenge and its futility are so universal. Ansem makes his entire identity about getting Xemnas back for betraying him so that he doesn't take any time to think about his actions. He leaves a ton of hurt and abused people in his wake, with Roxas and Naminé being top of the list. Even when he's helping Sora, it's really just about what's what Sora can do for him in fighting Xemnas. It's not until he's literally about to explode that he realizes he's been a terrible person, and that his constant failed attempts to turn hearts into data he can understand easily isn't going to work. In the end, he accepts his shortcomings only in the face of what he assumes will be his death. Maybe another stint in the realm of darkness will teach his dude some humility. So, obviously Kingdom Hearts 2 is the direct sequel to Kingdom Hearts 1. A lot has been said about the various spin-offs and how complicated it makes a series, but in terms of the narrative, the numbered games are the big stories, the tentpole games, and thus they're meant to follow a more familiar formula, which explains why Kingdom Hearts 2 is structurally so similar to Kingdom Hearts 1. The spin-offs are a chance to build the world and try out different kinds of stories and gameplay. So Chain of Memories experimented with the battle system and told a smaller, more personal story, and Days was a more serialized story that focused on mundane day-to-day actions. As a result, Kingdom Hearts 2 has themes that are mostly extensions and new angles on those introduced in Kingdom Hearts 1, as well as a bit of Chain of Memories. Friendship, darkness, and identity are still our main motifs, with the last one especially coming into play. What makes this a true sequel, and in my opinion one of the greatest sequels ever, is that it does everything the first one did, but the scale and complexity are all dialed up. Last time, if you recall, we had 4 major story threads, but if you look at this game, we have Sora trying to find his friends and going from world to world, Roxas and Naminé recombining with Sora and Kairi, Kairi trying to find Sora, Axel trying to get Roxas back, Riku helping Sora from the shadows, Mickey helping Sora from the shadows, Ansem the Wise taking his revenge on the organization trying to complete Kingdom Hearts, and Maleficent trying to make a comeback. There's a lot going on in this game, and I think it's a testament to the pacing that all these elements and stories dovetail so beautifully. You may notice that all these story threads come to a head during the final world of the game, and I think that's what makes it such a fun and satisfying one. Kingdom Hearts 2 is a very tightly plotted game, and its finale is, in my opinion, absolutely masterful. The separate story threads actually have a lot in common thematically. The beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2 finds almost everyone lost, either literally or emotionally. Sora and Kairi are separated from their friends with no idea how to find them, while Riku is alone by choice. Ansem the Wise is operating as Diz, his identity stolen and dragged through the mud. Axel is going rogue from the organization after realizing there's nothing left for him there. Maleficent has to rebuild her evil plans from scratch, with only Pete and some Heartless to help her. Naminé tries to help Kairi, but everything she does is with the knowledge that she's going to have to stop existing soon, while Roxas starts the game trying to figure out who he is, and ends up finding out only to go back to Sora. Only the organization really starts this story in a place of power and control, which is what makes them such effective villains. They always seem to be one step ahead, especially when it's revealed that Sora defeating Heartless has actually been helping them the whole time. They seem to be everywhere and have a hand in everything, which gives us a nice thread that goes between the worlds the second time you visit them, in place of all the villains working together like in the first game. Here I think it's a little bit more effective, although I definitely think we could have gotten some more development with some of them. Looking at you, Luxord. So the main thrust of the story for most of the characters is about taking control and reuniting. Sora, Kairi, and Riku finally find each other again, and the latter two join the fight. Ansem comes out of the shadows and frees the hearts from Kingdom Hearts, which is like the one unselfish thing he's ever done. Maleficent saves Sora twice, though she assures him it's only so she can finish him off herself. Axel picks a side and helps Sora too, finally reuniting him with Roxas even if it's only momentarily. This again all comes together in the last world, and the roles are reversed as the organization falls apart. By the way, Xion gets a lot of criticism for getting disposed of so cleanly in 358/2 days, covering up her absence in Kingdom Hearts 2. And in all fairness, that's absolutely how her arc was designed, but it's often said that she's not super important to the overall story. That I disagree with, because she's actually the catalyst that brings down the organization. Seriously, Xion destabilizes and goes looking for answers about who she is, which causes her and Roxas to question their place in the organization and the world in general. Xion shares in Roxas and Axel's friendship, hastening the redevelopment of their hearts, so that when Xion has to sacrifice herself for Roxas, he has enough of a heart to feel bad about it, so he defects from the organization. This causes them to have to resort to Sora, who they cannot control and who you may recall ends up murdering most of them. Roxas leaving causes Axel to leave the organization too, so that later he can help Kairi and Sora defeat them. So yeah, she's actually pretty important by virtue of the connections that she made with other characters that encourage them to take the path that they did. So we have this reversal by the end of the game where all the characters have come together and taken control, and the organization is on its last legs. Xemnas at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2 is completely desperate. His carefully laid plans have all come apart, and though he maintains a calm demeanor based on what we know about Xemnas in hindsight, he actually seems pretty unhinged. Taking the power of Kingdom Hearts for himself is a last-ditch play at fighting Sora, going against Xehanort's 13 Darknesses plan, and if you believe in the Xemnas trying to bring back Aqua and Ventus theory, he's clearly not thinking much of them at this point either. By the time he goes down, he's gone from being this crazy in-control villain to kinda sad. Also, let's take a moment to feel bad for Saïx, who seems to have genuinely thought Xemnas' plan was going to get him his heart back. Sorry buddy, you got played. While most Kingdom Hearts games start in a happy place and end in a sad place, this one actually starts sad and ends happy. That's what gives it an air of finality when it comes to this part of the series. All the characters have been established, moved forward, and brought back together so we can start a new part of their adventure. Recoded is our first look at what's coming next, as well as a reflection on what's come before. We get confirmation that defeating someone's nobody and heartless will cause them to reform, which means Xehanort's coming back. Sora and Riku, who have mostly just been flying by the seat of their pants so far, are going to need a little bit of guidance if they're going to defeat him. The Sid understands that Xehanort's reformation means that he'll be able to learn from the mistakes of his last 3 plans and finally figure out the best way to get Kingdom Hearts. By virtue of the way the original story was designed, the first half of Recoded doesn't have a lot of plot significance on its own, so the end is more of a hint at what the final phase of the Xehanort story is going to be like. It reminds us of all the pieces that have been taken off the board and some of the threads that have been left dangling. However, what it lacks in plot significance, it makes up for in thematic significance. So we talked in the last analysis video about how nobodies are thematically another exploration of identity, and that going forward defining existence would be a major theme. With Tron and Kingdom Hearts 2 we start to get into this a little bit more, and it's the entire basis of Recoded. Chain of Memories introduced us to people made of memories, Kingdom Hearts 2 introduced us to people made of computer data, and Recoded basically combines the two. From a gameplay standpoint, in Chain of Memories and Recoded, this was an easy way to use existing worlds and characters in a way that wasn't essential to the story, so they could save new worlds for the main games. From a story standpoint though, they're actually thematically perfect. They give us a new kind of character to talk about identity with. So as we said before, the new question we're dealing with here is how you define existence. Though the data that makes up the Datascape people is immeasurably more complex than any artificial intelligence we have with our current technology, they're still considered different from the originals. With a couple of exceptions, the data people themselves don't have any understanding of what they are. They just exist. To us, the world is a lot more simple, but from their perspective, it's all there is. We've seen something like this before with characters like Riku Replica and Shion. In both cases, knowing they weren't natural people drove them to despair, and neither one of them was able to overcome it in the end. Without going too far into the matrixy philosophical elements of this, what Kingdom Hearts is asking in the end is how far the empathy it's always preaching should go. All living things are precious, but how do we define living? There are worlds within worlds inside us. Our memories can be people, but are these people real? They're copies of the originals in a world much less complex than ours, but they're not Sims or Nintendogs either. They have feelings, independence, a sense of self. They're real, at least as far as Kingdom Hearts is concerned. Donald and Goofy consider Data Sora just as real as their Sora. Their worldview here is incredibly simple. It doesn't take all the complexities of artificial intelligence and clones and whatever else into account. They're people, they're real, they matter. This is important when you consider that we've been dealing with the nobodies, the most powerful of whom for all intents and purposes seem like normal people but without hearts. We're told repeatedly that they don't exist, they're not real, because in Kingdom Hearts your heart is the core of your being, your soul, even if you're made of ones and zeros. Even Sora himself believes in this until his interactions with Axel and Roxas convince him nobodies can have hearts. When Data Sora manifests his own Keyblade, it's not just the most important moment in Recoded, but one of the biggest in all of Kingdom Hearts. Data people have hearts. Real hearts that can manifest power the way that quote-unquote real peoples can. Nobodies who are fundamentally beings without hearts can grow new ones. In a world where emotions are power, this is huge. It legitimizes basically anyone even remotely human, and gives them the power to become legitimate if they're not. So what's the point? Why does this matter? Why am I harping so much on it? Because this is about Kingdom Hearts' worldview, its purpose. This is about empathy. Kingdom Hearts is relentlessly corny and sentimental, and I totally get why it turns some people off, but even though they lay it on really thick sometimes, it's one of the things I love most. There's a surprising amount of moral complexity in Kingdom Hearts, certainly more than most people give it credit for, but compared to say Game of Thrones, it's always going to come back to love and kindness triumphing over everything. And while I do love Game of Thrones, it's nice to have a story with an optimistic mindset too. You may recall that in my analysis on Xehanort, I said that what makes him a villain isn't what he wants. As far as we know, he just wants a more balanced world between light and dark. What makes him a villain is that he's willing to do anything to attain that goal and doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. What makes him a villain is that he places absolutely no value on human life. That's what separates him from our heroes. Sora, Donald, Goofy, Mickey, and their allies are defined by their empathy, their desire to help people. They place an incredible value on human life, but more than that, they find value in life beyond that. They have every reason to look at the Datascape and memory people as lesser, but they're treated as important and real, just as real as the people they're based on. Sora can't see anyone in trouble, no matter who or what they are, and not help. He cares, really, truly, genuinely cares about other people. His constant speeches and diatribes about light and the heart are corny, but they're sincere. Sora sees the best in all of us, wants the best for all of us. Kingdom Hearts at its core is about finding the light in the dark darkness, about hope, kindness, and love triumphing over apathy, hatred, and despair. You come into contact with so many people over the course of your journey. Some play a tiny, seemingly insignificant part in your story, some play a major role. Some are powerful, some are weak. Some are real, some seem like mere copies of people. But what Kingdom Hearts is telling us is that each and every one of them is precious. It's easy to give in to the darkness, to embrace apathy and treat people as if they're lower than you because it means having no responsibility. Accepting people, showing them patience and affection and letting them be important to you means taking on a burden. Xehanort has no burdens. He's the only person in existence he ever has to think about. This is what makes his path easy. He never has to give pause to his actions, never has to shoulder the burdens of anyone else. But as a result, his existence is dull and empty. Sora has taken on the troubles of countless people, never because he had to, but because he wanted to. He loves people, and loving is so much harder than hating, but he's never questioned it. That's what makes him such an inspiring character and Kingdom Hearts such an inspiring game series. In our world, it's easy to feel helpless when presented with so many problems, both big and small. So many of us wish we were heroes, but we don't have the ability or the resources to save the whole world. But we don't always have to. Small acts of kindness are important, trying to find whatever small light within the darkness we can. Because if we all do it, those tiny lights form one much bigger. And you know what? Even though it may not have a totally realistic worldview, I think we need that extreme viewpoint in Kingdom Hearts to remind us that there's good out there. In a world of grim heroes, Sora and his friends are a breath of fresh air. The treatment of the data people is a big deal because it's reminding us what makes them different from the people they're going up against. And if I have to hear the words light, darkness, and heart repeated 500 million times by the end of this series to drive that point home, I think I'm okay with that. So that's my analysis of Kingdom Hearts 2 and Recoded. The ending got a little sappy, but that's what happens when you spend this much time thinking about Kingdom Hearts. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.